All right, Zev. What happened to everyone else? I thought you were Bob and no, we'll see.
It was not very helpful. So I think I'm gonna hit them. I don't know why it's doing
Finish
that.
eating first, all right.
They're not useful that way. So I'm gonna-
They announced it. I sent them an email after we talked on the phone.
Yeah, okay, so let me know. Yeah, we. Right. Well, you do what I wrote. I said, you know, the people in the kitchen. You know what? I'm gonna, you do it. I know, but you don't have anybody else.
Harvey is on Zoom.
That's the way you do it.
You got it on Harvey, yeah, I have it on Zoom. Harvey Greenberg is on Zoom. Harvey will be starting momentarily.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay,
Yep,
I was hoping that Bob was back, that he would get on too. Okay, all right. So, exciting Gemara, right, Zev?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to start. I think we're going to review the Mishnah. That's on the bottom of Tzadi Tet Amud Beis. Okay, very bottom of the Amud. An art scroll, it's probably, yeah, Zev has the place. Harvey, you okay?
I'm good.
99B3, says Zev. Okay. Okay, so I want to just introduce again, very quickly. We have been discussing the issue of a shaliach. Okay. Why? Because there seems to be a parallel between the almana and her arrangements of the estate. And in that regard, is she acting as a shaliach, a representative for the yatamim, for the heirs? And the Gemara is going to explore the following issue. Namely, we've also seen that a court can act on behalf of the heirs. And so the question we're asking is, as we go into the Mishnah, is the shaliach under normal circumstances more like the court, or is it more like the widow? Okay, why is that? Because remember, we've seen, the Gemara told us already that if the widow sold a piece of land below its appropriate market value, then that sale is considered invalid. Whereas when she sold the land at the market value, that was a valid sale. Now, why might that be the case? we determined was because she was acting as a shaliach, a representative, an agent for the yatomim, for the heirs of the estate, in order to acquire her ksuba. Okay? So, if that's the case, we now get to this new Mishnah and says, hold on a second. What does the court have to do? Normally, the court would make an assessment, right? And at their assessment, they would then announce a sale, a public sale for the property. People would come, the same way today. If there's an estate sale or something, they put an ad in the newspaper. Okay, so there would be a public, and then people could come, examine the item, put their bids in, whatever. Okay, so our Mishnah basically starts off, matnitin, shom dayanim. Okay, the judges make we said an appraisal. Shepichtu shtot or hosifu shtot. If in their appraisal they undervalued the property by a sixth, or they overvalued it by a sixth, machran batel, says the Mishnah. That sale is null and void. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, he says, machran kayam. He disagrees and says it's a valid sale. What happens? Im kain, okay, so Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel challenging Tanakama, the other rabbis. Im kain, ma koach beit din yafeh. If you don't say that it's a valid sale, aren't you challenging then the authority of the court? And what good is it? Aval imasu igeret bikoret. If they did some sort of letter announcing the sale, beinehem, and there's a question of lashon here whether that's really needed in the Mishnah. Nevertheless, afilu machru shava mana b'matayim, even if they sold land that was only valued at 100 for 200, o shava matayim b'mana, or it was valued at 200 and they sold it for 100, machran kayam, then, right, that sale is valid. Okay, so it could be that the court adjusts the sale, okay, the value, the money, okay, and more than a sixth or less than a sixth. But so long as they did this announcement, it's acceptable. Okay, so therefore our question again is a shaliach like the widow who has much more flexibility in general and no limitation, or is it not? She is the shaliach more like the court. So our Gemara starts off, Ibaya laho. So they ask, shaliach kaman, is the agent according like whom? And now we get to today's stuff. Kof, right? Okay. Rava says, Amar Rabbi Nachman, in the name of Rabbi Nachman. Shaliach k'dayanim. He claims that Rabbi Nachman says that the agent is like judges. And there's a big machloket here, we won't go into the detail, between the view of Rashi and Tosafot. Okay, we just started. Sorry. No problem. Okay. Tosafot basically say it's an agent of the court. That's why Rabba is saying that. On the other hand, Rashi said, no, it's an agent in general. Just like today, we have real estate agents that, right? Kedayanim, we said. Rav Shmuel, okay? Rav Shmuel Bar Bisna, Amar Rav Nachman, he says in the name of Rabbi Nachman, Ka'almana, no, that the shaliach is more like the widow. So what happens? Okay, and now the Gemara is going to explain each of their opinions. Rava Amar Rabbi Nachman. Rava says in the name of Rabbi Nachman, Shaliach Kedayanim, that the agent is more similar to the judges. Why? Ma Dayanim lav ladidho. The same way the judges are not selling the property for their own welfare or their own benefit. Af shaliach nami lav ladidei. So likewise, the agent doesn't sell it for his benefit, for his own purposes. La'afuke almana, to exclude the example of the almana, of the widow. Why? The ladida, because she is selling it for her own welfare or benefit. Why? Because she was selling the property in order to get the rest of her ksuba. That's the point. Rav Shmuel Bar Bizna says as follows. No, Amar Rav Nachman, that Rav Nachman said, Ka'almana, that the shaliach is like the widow. Ma'almana yechida, the same way the widow is a single individual acting for herself. Af shliach yechid la'afu, so likewise the agent is a single individual, also acting, in some ways for himself. La'afuke beidin derabim ninhu, which excludes the example of the Beis Din, because there are multiple people involved in the Beis Din, court usually of 3, minimally. Vehilchata, and the law is, says the Gemara here, shaliach ka'almana, that the representative, the agent, is considered like the widow, which would mean, that therefore, if there's a greater or lesser difference in the sale, it could make the sale, or it could make the act of the shaliach a null and void, right? So that's the key element to keep in mind. If we assume and accept the decision here that the shaliach is like the widow. So Gemara asks now, how is this any different from what we learned in a different Mishnah elsewhere? Ha'amer l'shlicho, one who says to his agent, say utrom, go and take truma for me from this produce, such produce, torem kedad bal habayit. The agent is supposed to take truma based on his perspective of what is the mindset of the owner. Ve'ime no yodea da'ato shel bal habayit, and if he doesn't know the mindset of the owner, tarem b'benonit, he is expected to make the truma, take truma on middle level. What is that middle level? Says our text, echad michamishim, 1 in 50. Pichat asara, if the agent sort of reduced it a little bit by 10, or hosif asara, or he added a little bit more. So in others, what happens if the agent did 1 in 40, or he did 1 in 60, right? Truma to truma. According to that Mishnah, it is a valid truma offering. And the Gemara goes on, Hatam, there, kevan de'ika de torem ba'ayin ra'a. So what's the issue? There, in the example of truma, since it's possible that one gives ba'ayin ra'ah, stingily, ve'ika de torem ba'ayin yafa, and there are others who give with more generosity. Amarle lahachi adam tich, and therefore he can say to him that this is the way I approximated giving your truma. So there's flexibility in that example, in that case. Aval hacha, but in our case, te'utahu, there was a mistake made. Amarle, and therefore what can the Balabaya do? Lo ibaya lach l'mata'eh. I never asked or required you to make an error. Okay. In other words, if the land is worth X amount, that's what it should be. That's what you.
They're calling an error is
The shaliach, right? In the case of the almanah, okay, there he's trying to support. That's why the shaliach is more like the almanah. In other words, that's why the Mishnah, our Mishnah, said in that case where she undervalued the undervalued the land, that particular sale is invalid. Okay. Now we go on. Amar Rav Huna bar Chanina, Amar Rav Nachman. He says also in the name of Rav Nachman, Halacha k'divrei chachamim. He claims that the law is like that of the sages. V'lit le l'Rabbi Nachman, ma'koch beit din yafeh. If that's the case, that we hold like the sages, like the Dayanim, he's saying, how is that possible? Wouldn't he raise the issue just as Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel did in our original Mishnah? What does that say about the power of the court? Va'amar Rav Nachman. But didn't Rav Nachman himself say, Amar Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, Yitumim shaba'u lachlok b'nichsei avihen, if there are heirs, orphan heirs, that come and they challenge, right? They want to divide up, really, the property of their father. Beit din ma'amidin lahen apotropos, that the court appoints for each of the heirs a guardian for each orphan. Ubororin lahem chelik yafeh, and it's the role of that guardian to determine a proper amount. Higdilo, once these orphans have reached mature age, yicholim limchot, then they can raise an issue and challenge what portion they receive. For Rav Nachman, Dideyama, and Rav Nachman himself said as follows.
If the agents can distribute it, what's the sense if they're minors? What's the sense in the distribute if they can change their mind later?
Well, that's going to be Rav Nachman's argument, right? That's what he says. Right? Rav Nachman Didei Amar, he himself said, Higdilo, once they mature, Ein Yicholim Limchot, they're not able to challenge what they Im Kain, Ma Koch Beit Din Yafeh. Why? Because he's saying, what then is the power of the authorities of the court? Okay, if they're going to challenge it later. Okay, why the appointment?
Power in appointing?
Why the power to appoint the guardian? Why the whole issue of the guardian trying to work out a proper arrangement for each of the orphans? Right. Lo kasha. It's not an issue, says the Gemara, not a problem, right? Ha de ta'u, ha de lo ta'u. In one case, we're talking where perhaps the judges made a mistake and therefore their authority is not to be maintained. In the other case, we're talking about a situation where the judges did not make an error. Idelo ta'u, says the Gemara. If they didn't make an error, what happens? On what basis are they able to challenge, to complain?
How can they make a mistake on land? Land has no fixed.
Oh, wait a second. We'll see. Beruchot, we're saying the location of the land, of the property. Was it adjoining property or not adjoining property? Because you remember, elsewhere the Gemara has taught us, okay, that the neighbor who's, okay, has a certain right to be able to acquire the adjoining property first.
In other
Okay,
words, He has preference.
he has preference, right? So maybe that's the issue that we say. So what happens? The Gemara goes on. Ki ata Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, Amar Ma'aseh, he told us a particular incident. Va'asa Rabbi kedivrei chachamim, and Rabbi made his legal decision based on the view of the Dayanim, of the sages. Amar lefanav Parta beno shel Rabbi Eliezer ben Parta ben beno shel Rabbi Parta Hagdol. And Rabbi, in this case, was challenged by Parta, who is the son of Rabbi Eliezer ben Parta, the grandson of Rabbi Parta the Great. Im kain ma koch beit din yafeh. Okay, if that's how you rule, then are you sure that that's going to not be challenged later and then ruin the authority of the court? So what happened in that circumstance? Says Rav Dimi, v'hechzir Rebbe et ha'maaseh, and Rebbe then recanted and changed his legal decision. Now, furthermore, what happens? Rav Dimi matneh hachi. Rav Dimi, however, okay, taught it this way. In other words, that as I just shared with you. Now, Rav Safra matneh hachi. However, Rav Safra taught it the following way. Okay, and we're going to see the difference in just a moment. Ma'aseh ubikesh Rebbe la'asot kedivrei chachamim. There was an incident, and Rebbe sought to make a decision based on the view of the sages. Amar lefanav Parta beno shel Rabbi Elazar ben Parta ben beno shel Rabbi Parta Hagadol. And he was challenged by Parta, the son of Rabbi Eliezer ben Parta, the grandson of Rabbi Parta Gadol. Im kain ma koch beit din yafeh. If you were going to decide in that way, what is the power of the court? And so, according to Rabbi Safra's way of teaching the incident, lo asa Rebbe et ha'maaseh, Rebbe did not make a decision based on the view of the rabbis, but rather instead on the view of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay, so here the Gemara picks up and raises the following question. Lema b'hakem iflageh. Shall we say this is what they're arguing about? Mar savar ta'ab davar mishnah choser, that one master holds that if a sage or a judge makes an error in an explicit interpretation of a mishnah, he must go back and recant and do it change. Umar savar eino choser, and the other master holds that one sage cannot go back and change. Lo, no, says the Gemara. The kuli alma ta'abidavar mishnah choser. No, everybody accepts the idea that if a sage made an error in an explicit mishnah, and he has to change, he must change his legal decision. Umar savar hachi hava ma'aseh. Namely, that one master thought this was the way the situation carried out, happened. Umar savar hachi hava ma'aseh. And the other master understood that that was how the incident happened. Okay. Now, we get to a new piece. And this new piece of the Mishnah is going to actually help clarify, again, the situation that we're talking about between the widow and the shaliach and the court. Okay? So Amar Rav Yosef, he says as follows. Armalata, the Zavina, if and when the widow, right, sells the land, achrayot ayatme, the guarantee has to be held up by the heirs.
What is the guarantee?
In other words, the guarantee is as follows. I sell land to Zeb,
Right,
right? Or I sell it to whoever. But I owe you money. You come and say, wait a second. You should get that property first
Right.
to cover what I owe you.
right,
Now, if when I sold it to Zeb, I made a guarantee,
right.
namely, if Bob comes to collect the money that I owe from you, from that land, I will pay you back.
So it's a very specific guarantee. It's not a blanket guarantee.
Right,
Saying if anything happens to your title, I'll make good.
exactly. I'll make it. Okay, but I'm not required to sell with a guarantee.
Right.
Okay. All right. So what happens? In this case, Rav Yosef is saying, Armalata de Zavina, if the widow is the one selling the property,
Right.
Achrayut ayat me, then the guarantees, the responsibility of the guarantee is on the heirs. Ubedin de Zavin, and when the court sells the property, Achrayut ayat me, then the guarantee is also still on the heirs. Pshita, says the Gemara, isn't that obvious? Almana lo itztarichale. The widow doesn't have to deal with it. It's not required of her. Ki atztarich le beidina. Where then is it required? In regarding the court. Maybe the court should have responsibility. We know that when in Sanhedrin, the Gemara tells us, if the judge decided and there was an error in his decision,
Right.
and somebody was lost money, the judge has to pay the person back. Okay? Mahu Tema. As we go on now, what are you trying to tell us? Okay, as we go. Kol dezavi mi beidina, whoever sells, right, okay, or buys really from the court, right? Adata lemefik le kala hu dezavi. Okay, he relies on the fact that there was public knowledge, that people were aware, public announcement, right? Okay, but kamashmalan, but it still comes to teach us that any achrayut, any guarantee is on the part of the orphans. Okay, we go back now to the next piece from our mission, right? Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. What does he say? In other words, in the view of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, how great an error could the court make and still have its decision be valid? Va'ad kam. Amar Rav Huna bar Yehuda, Amar Rav Sheshet, in the name of Rav Sheshet, ad palga, up to half. Tanya nami haki. And we have a Braita which teaches this. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he says, Beit Din shemachru shava matayim b'mana, a Beit Din that sold land worth 200 at 100, o shava mane b'matayim, or worth 100 and they sold it at 200, machran kayam, the sale is a valid sale. Amar Amemar, Mishmei the Rav Yosef. And Amemar says in the name of Rav Yosef, Beit Din shemachru below hachraza, if the court sold that property without the public announcement, ne'asu kamisha ta'u. It's as if they made an error. Right? B'davar hamishna, as when one erroneously decided or about a Mishnah, v'chozrin, and they must repent. They must come back, change. So the Gemara challenges it. Ne'asu, you're saying it's as if they made an error? Vadai ta'u, certainly they made an error. It's not. Why? Because our Mishnah taught Som Hayatomim Shloshim Yom, an estimate of property on behalf of orphans, 30 days. In other words, you have to announce it in advance, 30 days. Okay? V'som ha'hekdesh shishim yom. And if that property was guaranteed, set aside for hekdesh, you have to announce it 60 days in advance. Because therefore, if somebody has a lien against it, right, then they should be able to claim. Okay. Umachrizin baboker uba'erev. And we announce in the morning and in the evening. Imihahi, if it's from there. Hava amina, hani mili shaliach. I might dare say that in that case, we're talking about the agent. Ava beit din lo. But the beit din doesn't have to do that kind of excessive announcements. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that's not the case. Eitive Rav Ashi la'amema. But Rav Ashi challenges Amema with the following. Som dayani hadayani, the estimate of the judges, shepachtu shtot o hitiru shtot, if they undervalued by a sixth or overvalued by a sixth, which was our Mishnah, machran batel. Our Mishnah said that the sale is invalid. In this case, shava b'shava, machran kayam. But if it's equal to equal, then it's a valid sale. What are we talking about? Lav de lo achruz? Is it this possibly a situation where they made no announcement? No, says the Gemara. B'di achruz. No, they made an announcement. Mida sefer, b'di achruz hamin. But at the end of our Mishnah, it specifically mentions about making an announcement. Reisha, b'di lo achruz. And it would appear that the beginning of our Mishnah then is talking without any announcement. Why? The Katani, because our Mishnah taught, Seifa im asu igeret bikoret, that at the end, if they made this letter of announcement, afilu machru shav b'mane b'matayim, even if they sold what was worth 100 at 200, o shava matayim b'mana, or worth 200 and sold it at 100, machran kayam, then their sale is valid. Okay, so we see here a challenge, right, to Amema that that the court sale here is only valid, okay, under certain circumstances. If there's no announcement, then then it's a problem, even for the court. Okay. But maybe here we're talking about a situation where there was no announcement, but it's still not a problem. Why? Kan b'devarim shemachrizin aleihem, because maybe the sale was based on things where we're required to make an announcement. Kan b'devarim she'ein machrizin aleihem, and here maybe the sale involved things that don't require an announcement. And so the Gemara now has to clarify that for us. Ve'elu hein dvarim she'ein machrizin aleihem. And now these are the things where we don't make an announcement on. Ha'avadim, slaves or servants. V'hamataltalim, movable property. V'hashtarot, notes of indebtedness. And we're going to explain that, says the Gemara. Avadim, why? Ta'amamai, what's the reason we don't have to announce about sale of slaves? Shema yishma'u v'yivrachu. Perhaps they'll overhear the announcement and they'll flee. Metaltalin, movable property, ushtarot, and notes of indebtedness. Shema yignavu. Maybe they'll get stolen, right? V'bayat ema. And if you want, I would say as follows: Kan b'sha'ah shemachrizin, kan b'sha'ah she'ein machrizin. Maybe the difference is one of time. When is the appropriate time to make the announcement? Or the time is not appropriate for an announcement. The Amrei Nahadai Lekarda, as they say, the rabbis, the leaders in Nahardea, in regards to a karga, a head tax, the mazone, or in regards to sustenance, vilikavura, or in regards to burial, mizav ninan below hachrazata. One can sell parts of the estate without having to announce that, because immediate cash is needed, okay, in those situations.
But there's not always an objective value of like a slave. Slave could be one that's subject to running away, or something
Right.
would be worth less.
That's right. So that's the issue. That's why it's a problem. V'bayat ema. And if you want, don't like that rationale, I'll give you another, says the Gemara. Kan b'makom shemachrizin, kan b'makom she'ein machrizin. Maybe one place is a location where they regularly announce, and in another place where they don't announce. The Amar Rav Nachman, as said by Rav Nachman himself, Me'olam lo asu igeret bikoret b'nahadeya. That they never, ever made a letter of announcement in advance in the city of Nahardea. Why? Savur mina mishum de beki'e besuma. One might think it was because that they were so astute in terms of making assessments. Amarle Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef bar min yome, okay? L'didi mifrashali minei Rav Nachman. He said it was personally explained to me by Rav Nachman why he said that. Mishum dekaru laho b'nei achle nichse de achrazata. Why? Because in Nahardea, the rabbis felt that there were people who sort of, when the announcement of property, okay, was made, okay, the people would take advantage of the poor. And therefore, that's why they didn't do announcements there. Okay, we go on to finish up this particular item. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Says Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, Metaltalin shel yatomi. What about the movable property of the orphans? Samino tan umochrino tan la'alte. We assess them and we sell them immediately. Rav Chisda Amar Abimi. Rav Chisda says in the name of Abimi, Mochrino to l'shvakim, that you sell them at the markets. Velo plige, and they don't disagree. Ha de mikarev shuka. In one case, it might be where the time for the market is appropriate. In other words, it's close to one of the market days. Ha de merchak shuka, or okay, that's a distant time. Okay, or we might say it's not an issue of time, but location. Maybe the market is far away, or maybe the market is close. That's the difference between Tosfos and Rashi. Rav Kahana, Hava biyade shikra de Rav Mesharshia bar Chikaliyat. And now we have a story to clarify this issue of time or distance to markets. Okay? Rav Kahana had his own beer. Okay, and along with that, he had the beer of Rav Mesharshia Bal Chikai, who was an orphan, Shahaya ad Rigla, and he was waiting to ship or send the beer to the market, okay, for the holiday. Amar Afal Gav, the Nafal Be Itzatzata. even though there's the possibility of spoilage, maite zuze charifa, it's possible that at the holiday time, there will be more people and more people buying, and therefore you can still make a decent profit. Okay? Ravina hava biyade, chamra de Ravina zute. Okay, now another story. Ravina had in his hands the wine of Ravina Zute, the younger Ravina, Yatma Ba'achate, who was his nephew, the orphan of his sister. Hava Lidide, Nami Chamra. He also had his own wine. Hava Kemasik Leila Sichra. And they were considering shipping it to the location of Sichra. Atalakame de Rav Ashi. And he came before Rav Ashi to ask the following question. Amarle, and said to him, Mahu la'amtuye bahadan? Should I take his along with mine, even though I'm waiting to ship it, okay, and not sending it out right away? Amarle zil, lo adif mididach. Says, go, take you, don't wait, don't put it off. Okay, in other words, send it out with yours. It's no different than yours. Okay, and we finish that particular sugya. We go for a few more minutes, all right? A new Mishnah. And this new Mishnah is going to bring another issue, brand new for us, okay? Namely, does every woman who gets married receive a ksuba or not? Okay,
Pashut.
what?
That's not Pashut?
Not
guess
according, not according to this Mishnah. Okay, so our Mishnah teaches Hamam Enet. Remember, that's the young girl who, let's say, her mother and brothers marry her off to an older guy, and she refuses, right? Hashniya, a woman who's a secondary erva, va'ilonit, or a woman who is, excuse me, incapable of giving birth, right? Or producing children. Ein lahem ktuba. They do not receive a ksuba.
Well, they don't get payment. The
Well-
document they have, but
Well, we'll see. That's what the Mishnah is going to talk in the Gemara. Velo peirot. And there's no usufruct there for a husband, right? Why? Because that also implies they don't have to redeem them if they're held captive. Velo blaot. And they don't receive extra worn out clothing. So now the Gemara Mishnah says, Im mitchila nisa'ah l'shem ailonit. In other words, even though these are forbidden marriages, nevertheless, okay, in this case, we're going to see, okay, if he married her with the understanding in advance that she was unable to give birth, yesh la k'tuba, then she would receive a k'tuba. However, now we get to another category of marriages. These are marriages which are forbidden, okay? But the women, if they were carried out, the women do receive a k'tuba. Amana lekohen gadol, a widow to a kohen gadol. Grusha v'chalutza lekohen edyat. Okay, divorcee or a chalutza to a regular kohen. Mamzeret u'netina Yisrael. Okay, all right, we know a mamzeret and netina, right, to a regular Jew. Bat Yisrael u'natin u'lemamzer, a Jewish girl to either a natin or mamzer. Yesh lehem k'tuba. They do receive a k'tuba. Okay? So now what happens? Rav Tani. Rav teaches as follows. Ktana yotzeit baget. That, okay, that if she's a minor, okay, and he divorces her, he still gets a divorce document, ein la k'tuba, but she does not get payment. V'kol shekein mam emet. And certainly, someone who refused. Shmuel Tani. Shmuel, however, teaches, Mam Enet ein la ktuba. A Mam Enet does not receive a ktuba, right? Which is the same then as Rav. Aval yotz'a baget yesh la ktuba. But if she leaves the marriage by means of divorce, she gets a get document, and she also gets a ktuba. Va'azda Shmuel l'tameh. And Shmuel followed his own reasoning. The Amar Shmuel, as Shmuel says, Mam Enet, when she refuses, Ein la ktuba, she does not receive a ksuba, Yotz abaget, Yesh la ksuba. If she goes out and is divorced, okay, then she does get a ksuba. Mam Enet, lo pasla min ha'achim. With regards to one refusal, who refuses, she doesn't render herself invalid to marry any of the brothers of the man she refused. V'lo pasla min hakuna, and she is not invalid to marry a ktuba, right? Yotzeit baget. But if that young woman who refused was divorced, she goes out with a get, pasla min ha'achim, she is invalid, invalidates herself to any brothers, who pasla min ha'kuhuna, and she invalidates herself to marry a Kohen. Mam Enet einat tzricha lahamtin shlosha chodashim. A young woman who refuses does not have to wait. In other words, her husband does not have to wait 3 months to remarry. All right, and we finish up yotz'a baget, when she goes out with regards a letter of divorce, tzricha lahamtin shlosha chadashim. She must wait at least 3 months before getting married, and that's where we'll stop.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. All right, Harv. Okay. Take care.
All right, everyone have a good Shabbos and a good Moed.
Good Shabbos and good Moed.
But on the illegal marriages,